Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about what's happening in the economy in China, and specifically to talk about Chinese electric vehicles. Now, I don't know whether or not you're on board with the electric vehicle revolution, but it's a growing trend, and it's the fastest growing part of the car sales market. And China has taken a large slice of that market. Historically, we didn't really think about Chinese vehicle manufacturers in the West when you're considering buying a car. However, today, in the electric vehicle space, China is a major player. This chart shows the leading manufacturers of electric vehicles worldwide in the period between January and September 2024. And as you can see, the biggest manufacturer is the Chinese company BYD, having sold more than 2.7 million vehicles in that 9-month period. The second biggest manufacturer was Tesla, having sold around 1.3 million vehicles. Number 3 on the list is Chinese business Geely Volvo, having sold around 900,000 vehicles. Volkswagen comes in at number 4, having sold around 700,000 vehicles, and the Chinese business SAIC is number 5, having sold around 600,000. So what this chart shows is that in the first 9 months of 2024, 3 of the top 5 electric vehicle brands are Chinese. China is now the biggest car market in the world, having sold over 30 million vehicles in 2023, with the US coming in at number 2, having sold around 15 million. And Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers are looking to dominate the world. They are looking to export all of their cars and take over as many markets as they can. And this chart shows the meteoric rise of Chinese electric vehicle exports over the past 7 years. The black line here shows the total number of cars exported, and the yellow line shows the total exported to the European Union. And the reason I've highlighted the European Union is that I'm going to come on to talk to you about what's happened in that market over the course of the last couple of months in a moment. And what this chart shows is that between 2018 and 2024, the volume of Chinese electric vehicle exports increased by more than 1,000%. And in September 24, China exported over 154,000 electric vehicles globally, and 61,000 of those, around 40%, went directly to the European Union. So all of this looks really positive from China's point of view. It's taking a large share of a growing market. However, over the past 12 months, there have been a number of investigations launched by governments around the world because they believe that the Chinese authorities have been subsidizing the electric vehicle market in China so that those manufacturers can undercut all of the other car manufacturers around the world. And in May 2024, the USA announced that it was applying a 100% tariff against all imported Chinese electric vehicles. So basically, the USA has doubled the sales price of those cars. And the application of that tariff, alongside US buyers' reluctance to actually buy Chinese vehicles, has meant that China doesn't really have any meaningful sales of electric vehicles in the USA. The European Union represents China's largest single export market for electric vehicles, representing around 40% of sales. And over the past 12 months, the European Union has conducted an investigation to see whether or not Chinese manufacturers were being subsidised. This chart shows the growth of European Union electric vehicle imports between 2018 and 2023, split out by destination. So this tells us where those vehicles have been imported from. The red section represents imports from China, the light blue section from Korea, the dark blue section from the UK, the green section from the USA, the purple section from Japan, and the dark green section at the top from the rest of the world. And what this chart shows is that over the past 5 years there has been a rapid acceleration in the import of electric vehicles, from less than 100,000 in 2018 to more than 2.4 million in 2023. And over the past 3 years, the biggest single market that the EU has been importing vehicles from is China, which now represents around 50% of all of the electric vehicles that the EU is importing. And this chart, which has been taken from the EU investigation, compares the price of those electric vehicles being imported from China against the price of imports from other countries. The light blue bars on this chart show the price from China, and the light green bars show the price from the rest of the world. And what you can see very clearly from this chart is that in every single year, the price of electric vehicles being imported from China was significantly lower than those from the rest of the world, and actually the differential has been increasing over the past 3 years. And this chart, which is also taken from the EU investigation, estimates the percentage subsidies being provided to the major manufacturers of electric vehicles in China by the Chinese authorities. And the different coloured sections on this chart show how the Chinese government is actually providing those subsidies. And the different methods that they've used include loans, preferential financing, grants and fiscal subsidies, flat duty taxes, land use rights, government provision of batteries and battery inputs, and tax exemptions and reductions. And what this chart shows is that BYD, which is the world's largest producer of electric vehicles, has been receiving subsidies of around 17%. The Geely Group has been receiving subsidies of around 20%, and SAIC have been receiving subsidies of around 37%. And as a direct result of that investigation, the European Union has now applied additional tariffs against each individual Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer. And interestingly, those tariffs correspond exactly to the level of subsidy that the EU believes that the car manufacturers have been receiving, with BYD being hit with an additional tariff of 17.4%, Geely 20%, and SAIC 38%. And the other Chinese car manufacturers that participated in the investigation have been hit with an average duty of 21%. However, those that did not participate have been hit with an additional tariff of 38%. The additional EU tariffs took effect from October 2024, and we've now got the sales figures in for November. This chart shows the percentage of electric vehicle sales in Europe held by Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers between 2019 and November 2024. And what this shows is that in November 2019, Chinese vehicles accounted for 0.9% of electric vehicle sales. That percentage increased to 3.4% in 2020, 4% in 2021, 7.4% in 2022, 8.6% in 2023, and by June 24, the percentage had increased to a high of 11.1%. However, the latest figures for November 24 show that the percentage has now fallen to 7.4%, which is the lowest since March this year, and you can see that over the past 5 months, the percentage has been falling rapidly. So what we're seeing here is that the tariffs that have now been applied by the European Union are starting to impact on Chinese electric vehicle sales. They are now falling because the price of those vehicles has risen dramatically. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video because I think what's happening with Chinese electric vehicle sales is really quite fascinating. Over the past few years, China has taken a bigger and bigger share of this new growing market. There is a push in a lot of countries around the world towards electric vehicles. Many governments have introduced legislation that basically will ban the sale of combustion engines at some point over the next 5 or 10 years. So all of us are being forced down this road. We will have to buy electric vehicles if we want to buy new cars at some point in the near future. And because a lot of the batteries that are being used in these vehicles are actually produced in China, China took the opportunity to dominate the market, and that's what we've seen over the past few years. However, the governments around the world smelled something foul. They decided that things were not quite right because China was selling its vehicles at significantly lower prices than all of the other car manufacturers. And there is a risk here that the traditional car manufacturers will go out of business if they can't compete in this new market. So the USA was the first to step up, and they said that they did not believe that the Chinese manufacturers could produce their vehicles at such low prices. And so they decided to level off the market by doubling the price of those cars in the US market. They applied a tariff of 100%. And the European Union has taken the last 12 months to complete an investigation, and they decided that the different car manufacturers were receiving different levels of subsidy. So they've now applied tariffs against all of those different brands. And the application of those tariffs has had a huge impact on Chinese electric vehicle sales in the first month after it's been applied. We have seen those sales coming down, and it's likely that over the next 3 to 6 to 12 months, that trend will continue because a lot of people are buying vehicles based on the price. So obviously, if Chinese vehicles are now relatively more expensive, they're going to be less competitive. But I think also there is a backlash that's now forming in Europe against Chinese electric vehicles, because people are aware that car manufacturers could potentially go bust here. We're hearing lots of stories about these businesses struggling with the shift over to electric vehicles, whereas electric vehicle manufacturers in China don't seem to have any of those problems. So the overall summary of today's video is that over the past few years, China has been taking a big share of a growing market. This has been fantastic from China's point of view. And in the last 12 months, they have delivered sales of more than $35 billion for Chinese car manufacturers. So this represents a lot of income for the Chinese economy. However, Europe and the USA have now decided that enough is enough in terms of price competition. They've leveled the playing field by applying large tariffs against Chinese electric vehicle imports. And this is going to hurt those Chinese businesses and ultimately the Chinese economy, because the EU represented 40% of all of the Chinese electric vehicle sales. They're now going to see a huge reduction in those sales. That's going to hurt those brands. And it's also going to cause problems for those businesses, because they are churning out hundreds of thousands of these vehicles every single month. And if they can't sell them, it's going to cause big issues. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.
There you go.